Putin is playing the long game, as Europe considers withdrawing support for Ukraine's proxy war. An expert has warned that Vladimir Putin could benefit from a change in Western leadership as a result of the protracted conflict in Ukraine and the severe sanctions imposed on Russia. An expert claims that Vladimir Putin can play the long game and wait for Western voters to turn to politicians supporting more populist and nationalist ideas. In response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Europe and the United States have provided Ukraine with military aid and imposed multiple rounds of economic sanctions on Moscow. However, an expert claims that at almost 600 days into the conflict, the public in the West is starting to feel war and economic fatigue due to the increased cost of living brought on by the sanctions and the war. This could eventually lead to countries turning inward and becoming less sympathetic to the Ukrainian people's struggle to free their country from Russian occupation. Professor Michael Rossi of Rutgers University's Department of Political Science argued that Putin would benefit from this. He told Express.co.uk, "The longer the war and sanctions drag on and the more this is seen as a proxy war, people like former Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, former Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and former leader of France's National Rally, Marine Le Pen are going to grow, and they're going to grow in electoral support, not because people support their ideologies, but because it's just the support for the opposition." Furthermore, the expert elaborated, Russia plays the long game, this is how they do it all the time. They are well equipped to withstand war and sanctions, both financially and diplomatically. And yes, this is a means by which Europe can be allowed to self-destruct. On September 30, voters in Slovakia, a country where many residents disbelieve Russia is to blame for igniting the conflict in Ukraine, will cast their ballots. Robert Fico, one of the candidates for prime minister, has made statements in recent months that are likely to have pleased Putin. The Slovak politician, who lost his position as prime minister in 2018, is trying to win back voters with a more populist platform this year. Mr. Fico campaigned on a platform that included ending military aid to Ukraine and opposing sanctions against Russia ahead of the parliamentary elections on September 30 in Slovakia. Mr. Rossi continued, "When we get governments like that, it certainly helps Russia out, although not tremendously." He was referring to the possibility of Mr. Fico being elected as prime minister. Moving in the opposite direction, as Slovakia has been doing recently, won't accomplish much in the long run. Yes, this is a way of eroding support within, the author says, but there's no doubt that Russia relies more on friendly relations with bigger countries like Turkey, India, and China. Since Mr. Fico would almost certainly need to form a government coalition with at least two other parties in order to reach the majority in parliament, Mr. Rossi emphasized that even if Mr. Fico were elected, his pro-Russian stance would be curbed. However, the expert believes that if Mr. Fico's Smer party wins, it could be a precursor to a change in Western perception of the Ukraine war.